Private Emma Rodriguez had failed every test, missed every target, and embarrassed herself in every drill for 3 straight weeks. Her drill sergeant was filling out papers to send her home when SEAL Commander Mitchell arrived for a regular inspection. That recruit won't make it through another week, the sergeant warned. Mitchell watched Emma struggle through another failed weapons exercise, then walked over and handed her a folded piece of paper. Private, you have new orders. Report to the tactical range in full combat gear. Emma looked at the paper and saw something that made her hand stop shaking for the first time since boot camp began. The Marine Corps Recruit Training Center at Parris Island, South Carolina, had broken stronger people than Private Emma Rodriguez. 3 weeks into the toughest training program in the American military, Emma was drowning in a sea of failure that seemed to get deeper with every sunrise. Her drill instructor, Staff Sergeant Mitchell, had seen thousands of recruits pass through these gates. Some succeeded amazingly well, some failed with honor, and some, like Emma Rodriguez, seemed headed for neither glory nor dignity. Rodriguez. Mitchell's voice cracked across the training ground like a whip. Front and center, Emma jogged forward, her uniform already soaked with sweat even though it was early morning. Her rifle felt strange in her hands, her movements awkward and unsure. Around her, the other recruits moved with growing skill and confidence, while she remained stuck in a cycle of mistakes and corrections that seemed impossible to break. Rodriguez, explain to me how someone graduates high school with honors and can't figure out how to take apart an M16. No excuse, sir, Emma replied, the standard answer that had become her most used phrase. No excuse is right. You failed weapons testing 3 times. You can't hit the side of a barn from 10 feet away. Your physical fitness scores are below minimum standards. Your tactical knowledge is non-existent. Mitchell paused, studying her with the kind of stare that could strip paint. Tell me, Rodriguez, why exactly are you here? Emma stood at attention, staring straight ahead. The honest answer was that she didn't know anymore. 3 weeks ago, she'd been certain that military service was her calling. She'd scored high on the test, impressed her recruiter, and arrived at Parris Island with dreams of serving her country with honor. Now, she was the platoon joke. I want to serve my country, sir. What doesn't qualify you to carry a weapon in defense of American lives? Rodriguez. Skill does. And right now, you're showing me none. The morning continued with another round of weapons training that Emma approached with the same result she'd achieved every previous day. Her shots scattered across the target like confetti, missing the scoring zones completely. Her weapon handling was clumsy, her stance unstable, her breathing uneven. By noon, Mitchell had seen enough. Rodriguez, report to the company office after lunch. Bring your gear. Every recruit knew what that meant. Emma was being sent home with a failure mark that would follow her for the rest of her life. She joined the Marines to prove herself capable of something meaningful. And instead, she was proving herself incapable of anything at all. As she sat in the dining hall picking at food she couldn't taste, Emma wondered what she would tell her family. Her father, a Vietnam veteran who'd never quite hidden his disappointment that none of his children had followed his military path. Her mother, who'd been so proud when Emma enlisted. Her younger sister, who'd looked up to her for the first time in her life when she'd announced her plan to become a Marine. Now she would return home as living proof that wanting something wasn't enough. Rodriguez. Emma looked up to see a man she didn't recognize approaching her table. He wore combat clothes with no visible rank markings, but something about the way he carried himself suggested authority that went beyond anything she'd seen at Parris Island. You're Rodriguez? Yes, sir. I am Commander Mitchell. I need you to come with me. Emma glanced around the dining hall, looking for guidance from her fellow recruits or any familiar face. Finding none, she stood and followed the mysterious commander outside. Mitchell led her to a building she'd never entered, past security checkpoints that required clearances she didn't have. Finally, they arrived at a small office that looked more like a college professor's study than a military workspace. Sit down, Rodriguez. Emma remained standing at attention. Sir, I prefer to stand. That wasn't a request. She sat. Mitchell settled behind a desk covered with files, documents, and what appeared to be surveillance photographs. He studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "Tell me about your background, Rodriguez." "Sir, my background is in my file." "I've read your file. I want to hear it from you." Emma recited the basic facts of her life. Small-town upbringing, good grades, athletic participation in high school track and field, part-time job at her uncle's security company during summers. "Your uncle's security company?" Mitchell interrupted. "What kind of work did you do there?" "General duties, sir. Filing, answering phones, some basic equipment maintenance." "According to your uncle, you spent most of your time on the shooting range." Emma felt a chill. She had indeed spent countless hours at the range, but that had been personal time, not official duties. How did this commander know about that? "Yes, sir. I enjoyed target shooting in my free time. Your uncle also says you were the most naturally gifted shooter he'd ever seen. Says you could hit targets at distances that challenged his professional security staff." "I don't know about that, sir." Mitchell opened a file and began reading. "Regional Shooting Competition, 2019. First place in women's precision rifle. First place in tactical pistol. Third place overall in mixed competition against shooters with decades of experience." He looked up. "You were 17 years old." Emma said nothing. Her competitive shooting had been a private passion, something she pursued for personal satisfaction rather than recognition. State Championship 2020. First place in 3 separate categories. The range officer noted that your accuracy under pressure was amazing for someone of your age and experience level. "Sir, I don't understand why." "Rodriguez, you arrive at Paris Island with some of the most impressive shooting records I've ever seen, and then you fail every weapons test we put in front of you. That strikes me as mathematically impossible." Mitchell stood and walked to a window overlooking the training grounds where Emma had embarrassed herself daily for 3 weeks. "Unless," he continued, "you're deliberately failing." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Emma felt her carefully built facade beginning to crack. "Sir, why would I deliberately fail?" "That's what I intend to find out." Mitchell returned to his desk and pulled out a folder marked with classifications Emma had never seen before. "I'm going to tell you something that doesn't officially exist, Rodriguez. There are certain military operations that require abilities beyond what we can teach in standard training programs. Operations that require individuals with very specific skill sets operating under very specific conditions." He opened the folder, revealing photographs and documents that Emma couldn't quite make out from her position. "We've been watching you since you arrived. Not your performance in standard drills. Your behavior when you think no one is looking. The way you handle weapons when the instructors aren't watching. The way you move through tactical exercises when you're not trying to fail." Emma felt her heart rate speed up. She had indeed been deliberately sabotaging her own performance, but she thought she was being subtle about it. "Why?" Mitchell asked simply, the question she'd been dreading. Emma stared at her hands, trying to think of an answer that wouldn't sound crazy. "Permission to speak freely, sir?" "Granted. Sir, I came here wanting to serve my country. But after the first week, I realized that everything they're teaching us is designed to make us better at killing people. And I discovered that I'm very, very good at killing people." She looked up, meeting Mitchell's gaze directly. "That scared me, sir." Mitchell nodded slowly. "Go on. In civilian shooting competitions, you're aiming at paper targets. Static, controlled conditions, no pressure beyond wanting to win a trophy. But here, when they started training us for combat scenarios, I realized that what I was learning wasn't sports shooting. It was how to end human lives with maximum efficiency. And that bothered you?" "Sir, it bothered me that it didn't bother me." Mitchell studied her for a long moment, then closed the classified folder. "Rodriguez, what if I told you there were ways to serve your country that didn't involve traditional combat? What if there were missions that required your specific skills, but in situations where that ability could save American lives instead of simply ending enemy lives?" "I'd say that sounds too good to be true, sir." Mitchell smiled, the first human expression Emma had seen from him. "Most good things do." He reached into his desk and pulled out a single sheet of paper folded once and sealed with red wax. "Rodriguez, your current training is ended. You have new orders." Emma accepted the paper with hands that were steadier than they'd been in weeks. She broke the seal and read the contents. "Classified orders. Special Operations Training Command. Private Emma Rodriguez. Immediate reassignment. Report to Building 7. Tactical Range Charlie. Full combat gear. Live ammunition authorized. Duration indefinite. Authorization. Commander Mitchell, Special Projects. Sir, what is this? It's an opportunity to discover what you're actually capable of when you stop trying to be less than you are. Emma read the orders again, trying to understand their meaning. Special Operations Training Command. A program that doesn't officially exist for people who officially aren't here. And if I refuse? Mitchell's expression grew serious. Then you go home tomorrow with a failure mark and spend the rest of your life wondering what might have been different. Emma stood, holding the orders that represented either salvation or destruction. Everything she'd learned about military service suggested that volunteer programs were usually more dangerous than mandatory ones. Sir, will this training prepare me for combat? Rodriguez, this training will prepare you for things that make combat look like a fun activity. And afterwards? Afterwards, you'll be qualified for missions that require abilities beyond what most people can imagine. Missions that save American lives by preventing conflicts rather than winning them. Emma thought about her 3 weeks of deliberate failure, her carefully hidden abilities, her fear of what she might become if she allowed herself to be everything she was capable of being. How do you know I won't fail this training, too? Mitchell stood and extended his hand. Because this time, failure isn't an option, and because I've seen what you can do when you think no one is watching. Emma shook his hand, feeling calluses that suggested Mitchell had personal experience with the kind of training he was offering. One question, sir. How long have you been watching me? Since the day you enlisted, Rodriguez. Your competitive shooting records flagged our recruitment computer programs. We've been waiting to see if you had the right mindset to match your technical skills. And deliberately failing basic training showed the right mindset. Deliberately failing because you were afraid of your own abilities showed exactly the kind of self-awareness we need for this program. Mitchell walked her to the door, then paused. Rodriguez, I want you to understand something. The training you're about to begin will show you abilities you didn't know you had. It will push you beyond limits you thought were absolute. And it will prepare you for operations that will never appear in any official record. Understood, sir. More importantly, it will teach you how to use your natural abilities in service of something larger than yourself without losing your humanity in the process. Emma nodded, though she wasn't entirely certain what that meant. Report to Tactical Range Charlie in 1 hour. Wear full combat gear and bring every weapon you've been issued. The instructors there will be expecting you. Yes, sir. And Rodriguez. Sir, stop trying to be less than you are. Your country needs what you're capable of becoming. Emma left the building carrying orders that would transform her from a failed recruit into something she couldn't yet understand. As she walked across the base toward her barracks, she felt the weight of expectations and possibilities that had been absent for 3 weeks. For the first time since arriving at Parris Island, she wasn't afraid of what tomorrow would bring. An hour later, Emma stood at the entrance to Tactical Range Charlie, a facility she'd never seen before. Despite 3 weeks on base, the building looked ordinary from the outside. Standard military building with no special features. Inside was a different world entirely. The range stretched farther than any she'd ever used, with targets at distances marked up to 1,500 meters. The equipment was more advanced than anything she'd seen in basic training, and the few people she could see moved with the kind of smooth skill that marked true professionals. Private Rodriguez. Emma turned to see a woman approaching. Tall, athletic, with the kind of bearing that suggested extensive combat experience. Her uniform had no rank markings, but her authority was unmistakable. I'm your primary instructor. You can call me Sarah. Ma'am, should I be at attention? Sarah smiled. Rodriguez, you're not in basic training anymore. Here, you'll be judged on performance, not protocol. Sarah led her to a weapons table that held equipment Emma had only seen in special magazines. Precision rifles, advanced optics, and ammunition types she couldn't identify. Commander Mitchell tells me you've been hiding your abilities. Yes, ma'am. Today we find out exactly what you've been hiding. The next 4 hours redefined Emma's understanding of her own abilities. Under Sarah's guidance, she engaged targets at distances she'd never attempted under conditions designed to copy the stress and complexity of real-world operations. She didn't miss a single shot. More than accuracy, Sarah tested her tactical thinking, her ability to adapt to changing scenarios, her mental response to pressure that would break most people. Emma found herself operating at levels she'd never imagined possible. During one particularly challenging exercise, Sarah had Emma engage multiple moving targets while going through obstacles under fake fire. The scenario was designed to overwhelm even experienced operators, but Emma moved through it with a natural understanding of timing, positioning, and priority targeting that impressed even the veteran instructors watching from the control booth. Another exercise tested her ability to make split-second decisions under moral pressure. Sarah created scenarios where Emma had to identify real targets while protecting civilians in complex, rapidly changing situations. The mental stress was intense, but Emma found herself making correct decisions with a speed and accuracy that surprised even her. Outstanding, Sarah said as they finished the evaluation. Mitchell was right about you. Ma'am, what happens now? Now you begin the real training. What you've shown me today is raw talent. We're going to teach you how to use that talent in service of operations that protect American interests without anyone ever knowing you were there. Emma cleaned her weapons with the same careful attention she'd applied to everything else that day. For the first time in weeks, she felt like she was exactly where she belonged. Sarah, can I ask you something? Shoot. How many people know about this program? Sarah paused in her equipment check. As few as possible, Rodriguez. The people we train here operate in shadows, accomplish missions that never happened, and protect American lives by preventing conflicts rather than winning them. And we never get recognition for it? Sarah looked at her with an expression that was both proud and sad. Emma, the best operations are the ones no one ever knows needed to happen. The greatest victories are the ones where no one realizes there was ever a battle. As they put away the weapons and equipment, Sarah continued her explanation. The work we do here prepares operators for scenarios where traditional military approaches would create international problems or make situations worse. We prevent wars by stopping specific threats before they can grow into larger conflicts. And that requires people who can operate completely outside official rules. It requires people who understand that sometimes the most patriotic thing you can do is make sure your service never appears in any history book. Sarah walked Emma through the facility's advanced training areas, rooms designed to copy every possible operational environment, from urban warfare scenarios to long-range precision engagements in hostile territory. Each training space was equipped with technology that could recreate the stress, chaos, and split-second decision-making required for real-world missions. The mental preparation is as important as the technical training, Sarah explained as they passed a room where other trainees were engaged in complex simulations. We're not just teaching you to shoot accurately. We're teaching you to make impossible decisions under impossible pressure while keeping the moral clarity that separates operators from assassins. Emma watched through reinforced glass as a male trainee went through a hostage rescue scenario that seemed to change every few seconds. The man moved with lethal efficiency while somehow managing to protect civilians who kept appearing in unexpected locations. How long does this training last? As long as it takes, Sarah replied. Some people complete the program in 6 months. Others need 2 years. A few exceptional individuals have required only 8 weeks to reach operational status. And if someone never reaches operational status, Sarah's expression grew serious. Then they receive a new identity and assignment to a position where their partial training can be useful without putting security at risk. Everyone who enters this program serves their country, Rodriguez, just not always in the way they originally expected. Sarah showed her additional facilities. A medical training center where operators learned advanced battlefield medicine, a communications lab where they studied encryption and counter-surveillance techniques, and a psychological conditioning center where they learned to keep cover identities under extreme stress. We're not just creating superior soldiers, Sarah explained. We're creating invisible guardians who can operate in any environment, assume any identity, and complete missions that require both lethal precision and absolute discretion. They pass through a section dedicated to language training, where operatives learn to speak multiple languages with native fluency, and a cultural immersion area where they studied the customs, behaviors, and social dynamics of different regions around the world. The modern battlefield isn't just about superior firepower, Sarah continued. It's about understanding people, cultures, and the subtle dynamics that can turn a potential conflict into a peaceful resolution or prevent a crisis from ever developing in the first place. Emma was particularly impressed by the Technology Integration Lab, where operators learn to use cutting-edge surveillance equipment, communication systems, and defensive technologies that seem decades ahead of anything she'd seen in regular military training. Much of what we do involves gathering intelligence and providing early warning about threats before they become unmanageable, Sarah explained. Sometimes the most important mission is the one that prevents the need for any other missions. That evening, Emma sat in her new quarters. Private room, advanced communication equipment, access to resources she'd never expected. She thought about the orders that had changed everything, about Commander Mitchell's recognition of her deliberate failure, about Sarah's promise that she would learn to use her abilities in service of something meaningful. 3 weeks ago, she'd been afraid of what she might become. Tonight, she was eager to find out. The next morning brought advanced training that would prepare her for missions that officially didn't exist, conducted by operators who officially weren't there, in defense of American interests that officially couldn't be protected by conventional means. Emma Rodriguez had found her calling, not in the bright lights of traditional military service, but in the shadows where the most important work was done by people whose names would never be known. Some failures, she thought, were just success wearing a disguise, and some orders changed everything. The specialized training program would push her beyond every limit she thought existed, teaching her skills that bridge the gap between soldier and something altogether more precise. She would learn to operate in the spaces between nations, in the moments before conflicts erupted, in the silence where whispered orders could prevent wars. Most importantly, she would discover that her fear of her own abilities hadn't been weakness. It had been wisdom preparing her for responsibilities that required both lethal precision and unwavering moral clarity. In the days that followed, Emma would learn that the orders Commander Mitchell had given her weren't just a second chance. They were an invitation to join an invisible war being fought by people who understood that the greatest victories were the ones that prevented defeat from ever becoming possible. And in that understanding, she would find not just purpose, but peace with the lethal gifts that had once terrified her into deliberate failure. The program would transform her from someone afraid of her own abilities into someone who used those abilities with surgical precision in service of missions that protected innocent lives while never seeking recognition for the sacrifices made in shadows. Within weeks, Emma would be operating in environments most people couldn't imagine, completing objectives that would never appear in any official record, serving her country in ways that required both the ultimate in professional skill and the ultimate in personal anonymity. She would become exactly what she had always been meant to be, not a failed Marine, but a guardian operating beyond the boundaries of conventional warfare, protecting American interests through precision, intelligence, and the kind of quiet courage that shapes history from the shadows. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, you can see more incredible stories like this.